Hello everyone, welcome. So, I'm Matthias, the Archmaster. I'm here to essentially talk about everything D&D, tabletop RPGs, which are actually tabletop adventure games, and yeah, essentially everything in that sphere. As I go through this, keep one thing in mind. It may sound like I'm really perturbed, really upset, really angry about various things, because I'm like, oh, this stupid, stinking thing is so... But I'm not actually really upset. It's more like, dude, live and let live. I just channel a certain opinion, and I let that opinion completely take over me, and I'm like, ah, and then I come back to myself, I'm like, yeah, I actually don't care that much. So just realize that. When I sound like I'm super angry, I'm really not. I'm chill with it. But I can allow myself to hold that opinion very firmly for a few moments, or an hour if needed, if I'm ranting that long. Anyway, to start with, subclasses. Subclasses should not come at anything but level 1. The whole idea that 5.5 is like, oh, it's level 3 now, we equalized it, and it's like, and then even DC20 is like, oh, look, level 3, we equalized it. I'm like, it is so silly to have your subclass at anything but level 1, because it's innate to the class. If you're doing subclasses right, in my opinion, it's innate to the class itself. If you are a druid, and you're a Circle of the Land druid, and you're like, oh yeah, I can polymorph into land animals because I'm a Circle of the Land druid. How are you a druid before you figure out what circle you're druid? I can polymorph, I just don't know what kind of animals yet. I haven't decided. It's like, well, then you can't polymorph, can you? I know that's not how 5e works, but I'm talking conceptually, like, as a class, as a druid, what kind of druid are you? The main evidence I have for this is straight from 5e itself. When you pick your race at level 1, you pick your sub-race at level 1. There's no such thing as a generic elf or generic dwarf. Oh, I'm an elf. I haven't decided what type of elf yet. I'll wait till level 3. Boom, I'm a dark elf. It's like, you don't think that would have like come up in the first 2 levels of play? Like, oh look, you're a drow from the Underdark. That's a problem. Like, yeah, I decided I'm a dark elf today. It's like, no, you have to decide that at level 1. That's part of the race itself. You can't have a race without the sub-race. You can't just, I'm a generic elf. There's no such thing. You're either a dark elf or a wood elf or a high elf. Like, these are the only types of elves. You can't just be an elf. Same way you can't just be a fighter or a wizard. Like, what does it mean to be a wizard? Like, you're a wizard of one thing or another. You're not just a wizard, right? So I think if you were designing a class that can be so generic in its first 2 levels that you don't have to pick a subclass, then those are either, the levels are so light that they shouldn't really be considered levels of a class. It's more like level 0.2 and 0.5 and 0.10 or 0.6 or something. It's like this, such a small fraction of the class. Why are you even calling it level 1 if you aren't really there? Or it's just not thematic at all and you don't know what you're doing. Anyway, there are so many things we could go on about. Adventurous style of play versus storytelling, collaborative storytelling style of play, okay? A lot of people don't understand this. I didn't understand this like, 6 months ago, a year ago or something? Was totally blind. And I thought about it real long hard, and I was like, oh, this makes sense. Why don't people tell each other, like, why don't WotC and the people who make games know this and tell us this? Probably because they don't know. So there are several, we're just gonna talk about 2 for now. There are a few main ways of playing these, tabletop games we play. One is the adventurous style of play, and the other is the collaborative storytelling style of play. The adventurous style of play says it's focused on the player. Player. It's focused on the player. It's focused on the player playing the game. It's like any other game out there. It's how good are you at playing the game? Can you win? Are you able to play the game to win? It's not about your story. It's not about your oh so precious character and all the 15-page backstory and all the plot arc you want to happen later. No. It's about emergent play. It's about how good are you at playing the game. It's not character skill, it's player skill. The other one, collaborative storytelling, is new school to the adventurous style's old school. Collaborative storytelling is what we got into with 5e, where people are like, you know what, we don't actually want adventure, we don't want danger, we don't want hardship, we don't want to earn anything. We just want to be a superhero at level 1, and most of us start at level 3 anyway, because we all just want to be superheroes. And we don't really want to have to die, unless it's like pre-planned and it's a cool epic moment. I want to go out in a blaze of glory. How dare you kill my oh so precious character? It's just this self-aggrandizing, my character is so special. How dare you hurt my character? And it fundamentally lacks humility. Like, actually, my character is insignificant in the grand scheme of things. It's okay if he dies, right? Just humility, it totally lacks that. And it's like, my character is special. He's a super special person, and how dare, it's like, it's... And, you can say, oh, well, why would I come to play a game? Why would I, take 4 hours out of my week to come and play this game if I'm not actually going to get, what I want out of it? It's like, yeah, like, I totally understand, but maybe what you want is kind of juvenile. Maybe you should actually play some adventurous stuff where it's actually difficult and it's actually hard and you're not just like walking in and just like, I win because I decided to sit down to play. It's like, how about not? Anyway, the idea, here's the moving topic. It's related, but moving on. D&D is not a role-playing game. D&D is not a tabletop role-playing game. There are no tabletop role-playing games that I know of. I've never seen nor heard of a true tabletop role-playing game. Do you know why? Because first you have to define what is a game. Okay? And no, I don't mean like the philosophical thing. A game itself. I'm like, oh, I went out and bought a new game at the store yesterday. I went to my local game store and I bought a new game. A new tabletop game, right? I bought D&D 5th edition. I bought a new game. And so it says, oh, cool. Where is it? Show me the game. And you go on your bookshelf and you pull out a rule book and you say, here's the game. Right here, I got it. Right? What is the game? It's the rule book. It's the rules. The rules themselves, not like the physical paper of the book. It's the rules. The game is the rules. And you can say, well, the game is also like the flavor and stuff. Like, the game is not the introduction. The game is not the thing that tells you how to play the game. The game does not say, welcome to the world of Dungeons and Dragons, here's our history. That's not the game, because that's not the rules. The rules in that book, you can have tons of fluff in the book if you want. You can have a whole cookbook nestled in there if you want, right? Those aren't the rules of the game, okay? The game is its rules. So when you find a rule book and you say, I found a game, the game is the rules. All right, so if we know that what makes a game is its rules, that's like literally the DNA of what the game is, like that's what it is, it's the rules, then to have a role-playing game, you have to have role-playing rules. The game itself, the win state or the losing state, you win or lose, or succeed or fail, or make progress or not, etc. You win or lose by how well you role-play. A true role-playing game says you win or lose by how well you role-play. Now, have you ever heard of a game like that? Where it's not about you rolling the dice, it's not about your in-game character with hit points, and it's not about that at all. It's not even a narrative storytelling game. It's about how well you roleplay. Are you making the decisions that your character would make accurately? That's what role-playing is, making the decisions your character would make. That's different from immersive role-playing, where you make the decisions your character would make as if you were inside your head and you replace your persona with theirs for a while. That's immersive role-playing, and that's a different thing. But just role-playing all by itself, just vanilla role-playing, is making the decisions your character would make. Acting realistically within the fiction. Can you think of any game that has rules about that? Like, oh, sorry, you just made a decision that Bob the Barbarian wouldn't have made. You lose 10 HP. Like, no, that's never happened. No one has ever done it. No one has ever made a role-playing game where the game itself is about role-playing, where you win or lose based on role-playing. They've never made that. It doesn't exist, as far as I know. Like, go ahead and show me something where it's a real role-playing game. I've never seen it. The thing is, what D&D is, what my game is, what so many games out there are, is an adventure game. It's a tabletop adventure game, a T-tag, okay? Instead of a TTRPG, it's a TTAG, okay? It's a tabletop adventure game. Why? Because you open up the rules, and it says, these are the 3 pillars of adventure. Here is the adventuring day. Here is your player character. He's an adventurer in an adventuring party. Like, they talk about adventure all over the place. Okay, the rules are about adventure. The whole game is exploration, combat, and social interaction. That's literally what the game is. So, and those are 3 pillars of adventure. Like, the whole thing is summed up in those 3 things. If you can say the 4th pillar is plot, but still, like, the whole game is the pillars of adventure. So it's clearly an adventure game. Don't tell me it's a role-playing game. It's a tabletop adventure game. Okay, it's always been a tabletop adventure game. And you can say, oh, they say it's a role-playing game. Well, yeah, you can have a Honda and you can take a Ferrari, emblem, the little tag, and stick it on the front. Boom, it's a Ferrari. No, it's not. It's still a Honda. You have to look under the hood and see what it actually is, not just what they tell you it is. They can put it on the front cover and say, the world's greatest role-playing game. Does that make it a role-playing game? Or even the world's greatest anything? No, absolutely not. They can tell you what it is, and everyone uses the common parlance. Oh, it's this, oh, it's that. Doesn't matter. You have to actually look under the hood and open the rulebook and be like, oh, this is clearly an adventure game. It has adventure everywhere in the whole thing. Okay, so you have that. And that just gets to you after a while. You're like, why is everyone calling it an RPG? Has no one actually sat down and thought about this? Like, what is a game? Oh, it's the rules. Oh, it has no rules about role-playing. Clearly not a role-playing game. It's like, oh, it's a game in which you role-play. Everyone is encouraged to role-play. Okay, well, guess what? You can role-play in any game. You can play Monopoly, and you can role-play. You can make the decisions your character would make. You can even do immersive role-playing. And you can be like, I'm the big, fat, greedy capitalist, and how dare you? You got a cigar and be like, how dare you not pay rent? And like, you can immersive role-play. You can role-play. You can make the decisions your character would make in the game. Does that make Monopoly a role-playing game? Absolutely not. You can role-play in Call of Duty. You can play the single-player campaign in Call of Duty and be like, my name is, John, Barker, and I'm out here and I'm shooting people, and when people are shooting at you, you can make the accurate decision that the character would make, based on his backstory and all his past traumas and his likes and dislikes and everything. And like, oh, he goes and he hides behind this cover and he's like, oh, he's breathing hard, and he checks his ammo and reloads, and you can look at it and be like, oh no. Like, you can roleplay in Call of Duty. You can play multiplayer and roleplay in Call of Duty and be like this scared person or this super bravado. You can roleplay in any game you play. That doesn't make those a role-playing game, because the rules of those games have nothing to do with role-playing. It's only a role-playing game if the rules of the game have something to do with role-playing. The most you get in 5e, where the rules talk about role-playing, is inspiration. Where it's like, well, if they role-play their ideals, bonds, and flaws, then they can get a point of inspiration. That is the only rule that actually, in a roundabout way, even mentions role-playing. And it's so minor, and people forget about it, and they never use it, and that hardly, like, this one, not even 1/10 of 1% of the rules of D&D. It's like a zillionth of 1%. That does not make it a role-playing game. They're like, well, if you roleplay this correctly, you get some in-game benefit. It's like, yeah, that's like you took a baby toe's step toward a role-playing game, and then everything else is an adventure game. It's clearly an adventure game. It's not a role-playing game. So, yeah, there's that. Are you happy? Yeah, are you fired? Are you offended? Have I offended anyone? We'll see. By the way, I'm making my own game system. And my own world, which is, if I do say so myself, one of the most epic things anyone has ever thought of when it comes to fantasy worlds and stuff. I'm also releasing a Kickstarter soon enough, hopefully, Lord willing, about a certain setting, a certain part of my setting, the archipelago, 12 islands. I've been playing it for years, and it's super cool, super fleshed out, like super just epic. And then, Lord willing, later I'll make an actual setting book and, a player's guide for the game system itself. And who knows, I want this to be my career forever. Please give me money to help me do that, because I have currently negative $220 in my bank account. Isn't that lovely? Thank you. So anyway, back to this. What else could we talk about? There's so many things. Stun condition. I'm just going things that come to my mind. Everyone's like, we have the stun condition. Yeah, the stun condition kind of stinks because it just takes you out of play. Well, guess what else takes you out of play? Death. If you have a problem with the stun condition, that means you have a problem with characters dying. And maybe you do. Maybe you are one of those players who plays the collaborative storytelling style, and you don't want real danger, you don't want real death, you don't want real adventure. You don't think D&D is an adventure game. You think D&D is a collaborative storytelling game, like it says in the inside cover. And it's wrong. Like, you can put the Ferrari sticker on the Honda, doesn't mean it's right. They can say it, doesn't mean it's true. So you may, if you don't like stun condition and you don't like death, you're probably the player that thinks that D&D is a collaborative storytelling game. It's a medium to tell stories with your friends, and it's a storytelling medium, and that's all it is. This is a drama class with your friends. If you want to have drama class with your friends, you don't need D&D. You don't need a rulebook. You don't need an adventure game to do that. You can play drama class with your friends around a table, and every once in a while, you open up the D&D rulebook, and for 5 minutes, you're actually playing D&D and rolling dice, and then you stop playing D&D, and you go back to drama class, right? That's a thing where people think if you're sitting down at the table and you have a character sheet in front of you, and you have the rulebook open at the side, then you're playing D&D. No, you aren't. You can have drama class with the D&D book open, and you're not actually playing D&D unless you are interacting with the rules of D&D, unless you're rolling dice, unless you're interacting with the rules of the game. What most people do is they go on and off. When they're at the table, they're playing D&D in combat usually, because D&D has very little actual rules for exploration or social interaction. So it's usually when they're in combat, that's when they're playing D&D. And then they stop, and they go shopping, and they talk to each other, and you're not playing D&D. You took a break from playing D&D to roleplay. D&D is not a role-playing game. You can roleplay without D&D. You can take away the book and throw it out the window and sit around and roleplay with each other. You're completely uninhibited. You don't need D&D to do it. Therefore, D&D is not the thing you're doing. If you can roleplay without D&D, D&D clearly isn't helping you roleplay. It's not a roleplaying thing. Like, you don't need D&D to roleplay, and D&D doesn't help you roleplay. They're totally disconnected. Just like you don't need Call of Duty to roleplay, and you don't need to roleplay when playing Call of Duty. You can do one or the other or both, and they're completely disconnected. So yeah. You're pausing D&D to roleplay, and you're pausing roleplay to play D&D. They're not the same thing, just because you're doing them at the same time at the table. Like, even if you're literally doing them at the same time, where you're playing D&D, and you're thinking about, oh, what would my character do in this combat? Well, he doesn't like, great, you're role-playing on top of D&D. D&D, the rules, the playing the game is here, and you're just role-playing on top. It's like a blanket that goes over. It doesn't change the fundamental structure of D&D, and it doesn't mean like, oh, we're playing a role-playing game. And it doesn't mean, oh, I go to my friend's house to roleplay. It's like, these are separate things. You can layer them like two pieces of bread, but the two pieces of bread don't fuse into one thing called a role-playing game. That's just not what happens. They're two separate pieces. So anyway, I'm going to tire myself out doing this, but I mean, you can tell I'm somewhat passionate about a couple of things, mostly tabletop adventure games. Anyway, boy, what else is there to talk about? There's so much. We all know WotC, we all know the news, what's going on, all the crazy AI stuff, and all that. Wait until I tell you my opinion on AI. Yeah, you're gonna love it. I think there are a lot of people are gonna be like, dude, you're crazy. It's like, it's possible. So, I think I'll pause it there for a second. Let me think of something else. Can I just talk about my game system for a second? See, the cool thing about my game system is that it's so intimately integrated with the setting itself that they're almost inseparable. It's so cool because you actually have, it makes sense, things fit. It's like, oh, here's how it is in the world, and here's how your spellcasters work, because that's how magic works. It's like, oh wow, it actually makes sense, it fits. The bloody thing about 5e is that all casters are essentially the same. Like, the difference between a wizard and a druid and a cleric and what, it's essentially subclasses. It's all the same class. It's all the same magic class. You're the same caster class. You're just casting spells with spell slots. That's all you're doing. And you get them back on the rest. Everyone functions the exact same way. Everyone has spell slots. They level the spells the same levels of spell slot. They all have access to the same schools of magic. They all get the same spell slots in the same levels, except the half-casters and warlock, yeah. But like, all of the rest of them, they get magic in the same levels and the same, level of spell with level of thing, which, by the way, why are they both called levels? But anyway, they're all just the exact same thing. You play a wizard, and you're like, ooh, spell slots. So he's very academic. And it's like hacking code and stuff. So it's like, I hack the code of reality, and I take this one specific spell and I put it in this slot, and then I fire it, and I'm like, ooh, that's very, very intricate and mechanical. And it's like, cool, it's a wizard, he's very intellectual, cool. I'm gonna go to a druid, and he uses like his faith and his willpower and his connection to people and his god in order to, heal people. And you have the same scientific, mathematical spell slot. What? Why does it function the exact same way? Well, I'm a druid. I can touch a squirrel and polymorph into a squirrel because, I get the power, I can touch a tree and get bark skin on me because I absorbed it from the tree. It's like a natural kind of wild shape. I can wild shape from an animal, wild shape from nature. I can wild shape into a whirlwind if one passes by. Ooh, this is so cool. No, actually, you have spells. Spells? That sounds like a wizard thing. Why does a druid have spells? Why does the cleric have spells? Those should be miracles or canticles or invocations or something. It's like, why is it called a spell? Why are druids called spell? Bards are spells? Everything is a spell? And they all function the exact same way, and they all use spell slots. It's so just boring. You play one caster, you play them all. It's like, oh, this caster has wild shape. Well, then hone in on that. If one caster has wild shape, and that's his thing, then make his spell casting wild shape. Make it so that you can wild shape into, if you want to cast the jump spell in 5e, don't just have, I cast the jump spell, now I can jump. It's like, no. How about you have a frog or a grasshopper, and you wild shape your own legs to be really powerful jumping legs, because you're a druid, and so now you wild shape and you jump with the jump spell, because you wild shaped a bit of the frog. Partial wild shapes, instead of just the whole body or none, it's like, those are your spells. You partially wild shape, a tree, so now you have bark skin, and now you have the plus AC. You partially wild shape, the cat, and now you have dark vision. Actually make it druidic. You don't have spells, you have wild shapes. You can channel nature. It's that's so much cooler. This caster feels different from the wizard who has the specific spell slots and stuff, right? Make them feel different. And I could go on and on and on. My system actually has 6 casters, and 6 completely different spellcasting systems. You have roll to cast and spell slots and, per day and recharging. Like, they actually recharge stuff where, like, a certain amount of time or per encounter. But, like, that exists alongside the spell slot version, alongside the roll to cast, alongside... it's so cool! Anyway, I remembered that I totally bypassed the whole thing I was talking about. Death and stun condition, yes. So, the whole thing with stun condition, yeah, if you're one of those players, this was like 20 minutes ago. Actually, no, we only hit 20 minutes. Anyway, this was like way too long ago that I'm getting back to this. Thank you so much for your patience. If you're one of those, someone in the comments, give like a timestamp to this. Be like, hey, if you're watching this, skip to 20 minutes to actually get it. Anyway, so if you don't like stun, you're like, it takes my character out of the game. I can't play. I spent 4 hours, I took my time, 4 hours out of the week to sit down and play this game, and I just can't play for half an hour, however long. It's like, well, you're probably the character that doesn't like dying either. You don't like your character dying. And you're like, well, yeah, honestly, I don't like my character dying either. Okay, then why are you playing a freaking adventure game where death is on the line? What are you doing? It's like you're coming into an ice cream shop and complaining that all the food is cold. It's like, yeah, that's kind of the whole point, is that you have to have death. You have to have consequences. You have to have times where you can't play the game because you're dead or you're stunned or you lost an arm or like a bad thing happened. It makes all the times when you can play worth it. It's meaningful. It's a contrast, right? There's no meaning without contrast. You have to have like, wow, this was really dangerous. This was really hard. I'm so glad I got to actually play the whole time because, man, it was close. I almost died, right? Then you're appreciative. Like in the real world, it serves to immerse you so you actually feel like your character in the world and like, man, I really feel like him. I'm afraid for my life. And then you go home and at the end of the session, you're like, wow, that was thrilling. I felt like I was there. I felt like it was real. There were real life consequences as well as character consequences. If I failed and I didn't, and oh, I'm so glad. Or like, oh, I did fail and I died. Yeah, and the failure makes the success meaningful. This whole idea where it's just a sense of entitlement, where I sit down and play and I want to play for 4 hours because that's what I came to do. It's like, dude, get out. Leave my table. You are not welcome. If you have that sense of entitlement, that just because you showed up, you should get to play, like Mr. Participation Trophy. No, you have to actually play well. You have to succeed, you have to be smart, you have to play your character well, you have to have some player skill and some ingenuity, and if you die, then you have to sit out until we can make a new character and bring you in. I'm all for players playing, as much as we can get them to play. But the sense of entitlement that, well, I have to play, that's why I showed up. The GM's a bad GM if he kills my character. He's bad GM if he makes me stunned. It's like, grow up. This is not a collaborative storytelling game. This is not a storytelling medium. Go do drama class if you want to just tell stories. This is an adventure game. Open the rule books. It's about adventure. So if you want to play the adventure game, play the adventure game. Don't tell people, yeah, I play D&D, but I don't like adventure. I don't like danger. I don't like, things I don't know. I don't like having to problem solve and figure things out. I want to just roll investigation and let my character do it. And I just want to tell cool stories with my friends. That's called drama class. That's not called D&D. That's not called playing D&D. Even if on the inside of the 5th edition rulebook it says it's D&D, it doesn't matter. It's not. Because the rules themselves are about adventure. And if you are bypassing them to try to tell a story, you're just not playing D&D. Now, you may be playing at a table and having lots of fun, and more power to you. I'm not going to tell you how to play. I will tell you when you're not playing D&D. Yes, you're playing. You're playing drama class. You're playing fun time with friends. You are playing. You may not even be playing a game. But that's fine. Go ahead, play. Play all you want. I'm not going to tell people how to play. Some people play with sticks in the backyard. I'm not going to tell you you're wrong. I will tell you that if you're playing with sticks in the backyard, you're not playing D&D. And I'll tell you, if you are playing collaborative storytelling session at the table, you're not playing D&D either. D&D is an adventure game. It's about adventure. Again, do whatever you like. But just don't tell people, yeah, I play D&D. By the way, D&D should be played like this collaborative storytelling game. It shouldn't be. That's not like the one should. I'm not saying that it absolutely should not be, or it absolutely should be. I'm saying don't tell people that it absolutely should be played as a collaborative storytelling. That's a style that you put onto it. The default style of tabletop adventure games from 50 years ago, from day one, the default style has always been the adventurous style. Not the collaborative storytelling style, or the authorial storytelling style, where the GM is essentially an author and he has a story to tell, and the players just sit down and they listen. It's a linear adventure path, or otherwise known as a railroad. And yes, those are... So it's not... Like there's the collaborative storytelling style and the authorial storytelling style, and then there's Fantasy Life Simulator, where you're just like, oh, I'm going shopping, I'm starting a family. It's like some stuff you see in Critical Role where they're talking about all the downtime and all the shopping, all the minor stuff. That's called a Fantasy Life Simulator. None of those things were adventurous. So like there are 4 major styles: adventurous style, collaborative storytelling, authorial storytelling, and Fantasy Life Simulator. You can play at a table and you happen to have a character sheet in front of you and a rulebook out, and you can be playing with your friends for 4 hours, doing a collaborative storytelling exercise, or an authorial storytelling exercise, or a fantasy life simulator. And in any of those styles, you can have a book open and be like, oh, in our fantasy life simulator, how much does a horse cost? Well, let me look it up in this book over here. Does that mean you're playing D&D just because you're looking at the book and, oh, it's 500 gold? That doesn't mean you're actually playing D&D. It just means you're using D&D to play a fantasy life simulator with your friends. You're not actually playing D&D the way it was intended, the way it was originally made, the way it was formulated to be played, the way the rules actually say you should play it. You're not doing adventuring day, you're not actually playing the game. So, yeah. So all three of those ways. You can use the D&D rulebook, and you can use a character sheet in front of you. You can use all of these things, but that doesn't mean you're actually playing D&D the truest to D&D. The only way to do that is to play the adventurous style, where you're playing D&D to adventure, with the Pillars of Adventure and the Adventuring Day and all the stuff. You're actually doing it to adventure. Now, here's something that might completely shock you after I've said all this. I don't think the adventurous style of play is the best way to play. I don't think it has the most fun at the table. It is the truest, most accurate way to play D&D, technically. It's the adventure style of play, that's the true blue, right? But I don't think it's the best way to have fun with friends, at least for me. I personally prefer collaborative storytelling. I even prefer authorial storytelling, where it's like, guys have a really cool story to tell you. This might take 10 years to tell it. And they're like, cool, sign me up. I'll come to your table, yeah, I'll make a character, and tell us a cool story, and we're happy to be part of it. I'm like, great, cool. Like, I like players like that. The best campaign I've ever had went for like 8 or 10 months. It was just electric and awesome and wonderful. And it was collaborative storytelling. It was focused mainly on one player's character, and everyone else was essentially a supporting character. And by the way, they were totally fine with it. They loved it. They loved seeing her story progress and move. So it was the best thing ever to have that collaborative storytelling where we're here to tell a cool story. It was so enjoyable. But guess what? We weren't actually playing D&D. We were mostly doing a collaborative storytelling session, and every once in a while we'd roll dice and play D&D, and then we'd go back to collaborative storytelling. That's all I'm trying to get at, is these are different, and we should not equate them to each other and say, this is the one true way to play. No, it's something you layer on top. And maybe that thing that you layer on top is actually the best thing ever. You know, chocolate and peanut butter, or rather just salt and steak. That's my preferred. Anyway, it may be something you just layer on top, and that thing is the best thing ever, and oh, it's wonderful. But it's still, like, it's important to acknowledge that this thing is layered on top. It is not part of the base game. It is not innate to the base game. It's not true to the base game. It is extra. You can play Call of Duty, and you can roleplay if you want. You can tell a story if you want, but that's not what Call of Duty is. Call of Duty is just a shooter game. D&D is just an adventure game. That's all it is. It may encourage you to roleplay and tell stories on top of it, but that doesn't change the underlying structure of the game. It's still just an adventure game. Anyway, yeah. See, it's not about telling people how to play or the right way to do anything. It's just telling them the differences between things and saying, hey, here's this one, here's that one. These are different. Here's how they work and interact with each other. Which one would you like to play? Which one do you prefer? I played Dungeon Crawl Classics. I was so bored. Like, I wanted to like it. First of all, we didn't have a wizard, and that probably would have helped because all the cool magic. But I was bored because we were playing the adventurous style. It was about player skill. It was about, can you win? Can you survive? A whole bunch of characters kept dying and coming back, and we had a TPK, and then they made new characters and to finish the campaign. And I was just so bored because it was an adventurous style play, and the players didn't want adventure. They didn't want hardship and whatnot, and I didn't want to put them through it, and we all were just kind of itching to tell a cool collaborative story. And that means we just didn't want to play DCC, because DCC is an adventure-style game. It is an adventure game, just like D&D is an adventure game. And so we're like, we're just not going to play this. We could have said, all right, hey guys, let's just, ignore half the rules and make it a collaborative storytelling game, like people do with D&D all the time. Oh, well, let's just ignore how many encounters you're supposed to have in a day. Let's just not make the game that hard so we can have an adventurous, so we can have a collaborative storytelling style play. You could do that with Dungeon Crawl Classics as well. You can do that with anything. But we didn't. We decided not to. We decided to go play my system, actually. But still, yeah, that's the difference. I'm just telling you, these are the differences between them. Just be aware of them. That's all. And the reason why this is so important is because when I am still developing my system, but a few months ago when I was still developing my system, we weren't having fun, and I couldn't understand why. Because we all quit, and we're like I didn't want it, they didn't want it, and none of us were having fun. So we stopped, and I was thinking about why weren't we having fun in this adventure I was running. I was like, oh, there are different styles of play, and I didn't pick one. I was trying to meld collaborative storytelling. I was like, each of you should make this cool character with this cool backstory, and we'll integrate you into the campaign. And I was trying to do adventure style, where it's like, by the way, it's super dangerous and super gritty, and there are monsters everywhere, and you could die, and you have to make a new character, which just flies in the face of make a character and invest in them and whatnot. It's like, well, which one? And then I also had a cool story to tell. And it was authorial storytelling. It's like, guys, I have this whole, chapter thing planned out, this big long campaign. Do you want to hear me tell you the story? And they're like, yeah, absolutely. I was trying to do all three at once, and that's why it didn't work. So that got me to realize, the three major types. There's, fantasy life simulator, which you weren't even really playing the game at that point. It's like, you're just using it as a reference book, not as a game book. Anyway, but yeah, it's just important to know so that when you are looking for a game yourself, when you're going to a new GM and you're like, hey, I want to play this game, you now have the three main things: adventure style of play, where it's player skill. This is OSR, it's old school. Player skill. It's not about your also precious character. It's not about your character arc and your backstory and stuff. It's about the adventure. It's about winning the adventure. It's about you as a player winning the adventure itself and beating it. Okay. The collaborative storytelling style, which is what a lot of modern 5e players are playing, where it's all about your character, not the players, not about your skill. It's about your character skill, about your character's growth and your character's journey and your character's feelings and their traumas and all the stuff. This is where you fit therapy in there if you want, and it has all that stuff. And then there's authorial storytelling, where the GM has a story to tell. This is all of Wizards of the Coast's adventure modules. All of them are authorial storytelling. They're essentially a railroad, which, by the way, is fine for those who like it. There's nothing wrong with having a story told to you. If it's wrong to have a story told to you, then it's wrong to go to the movies. It's wrong to read a book, and it's wrong to play a game. Some people just want a good story to be told to them, and there's no prohibition to doing that at the table. Where instead of, Marvel telling them a cool story, it's their game master, Gary, telling them a cool story. And Gary's like, hey guys, I have this really cool story in my world. And they're like, cool, lay it on me. And I get to interact. I get to make a couple minor decisions. Cool, all the better, right? That's not a problem at all. You can't say you're railroading. It's like, yeah, and all my players signed up for it. And we're all good, right? So railroading is only wrong if they're trying to play the adventurous style of play or collaborative storytelling style of play, where, it's like either adventurous, like I want to go out in a sandbox and do my own thing in the world. Adventurous style of play says, I want to, collaborative storytelling style of play, second one, says, I want to see my character's journey and growth, and I want to decide how my character, evolves as we play. And then it's like, well, actually, no, sorry, railroad, I have a story I want to tell, right? So it only conflicts with the other two if you want the other two. If everyone's on the same page, it's okay. It's all about communication and just being on the same page and playing the same game in the same way, the same style. So D&D all by itself, and every other adventure game I've ever heard of, all by itself is an adventure game, and it's best suited for the adventurous style. That doesn't mean the adventurous style is the most fun you can have at a table. You can, I can have more fun at a table taking the adventure game and putting this outside factor, which is, role-playing and collaborative storytelling, and just kind of merging it on top, and boom, that's even better for me and my group. Most of the time anyway, one of my groups. So that's all I'm saying. Just look at it and realize, oh wow, these are different things. D&D is an adventure game. It's not a role-playing game. It's not a collaborative storytelling game. It's not drama class. That's not what the game itself is. Anyway, thank you for watching. Patreon in description. I'm making a Kickstarter soon enough about my archipelago, 12 islands. Really cool place. If you're offended, thank you. If you like this, thank you. I appreciate interaction. You know how on Reddit, when people downvote arguments they disagree with, that's not what you're supposed to do with downvotes. You should upvote arguments you disagree with, because it's giving provocative food for thought. And someone has taken time out of their day to engage in a debate. Reward them for it. Give them an upvote. You only downvote people that are just spamming, trolling, have nothing to do with the conversation, right? If someone gives an opposite argument and like, well, I think your game design idea is stupid, here's why. Upvote them, please. That's what you're supposed to do. That's how you learn. If you're downvoting people you disagree with, that's pride on your part. You're so prideful to think that you already know everything and there's nothing more you could learn from other people. So you're just going to hide them from you and downvote them. So you don't have to see them and no one has to see them because you're sure that you're so right and you have it all together. Just pride. Humility is how you learn. You say, actually, I might not know. Please tell me. So anyway, thank you all for watching. Maybe another rant coming in soon, one day, Lord willing. Goodbye.